Now, you still have organized groups that are attempting to foment sectarian strife on both sides. On the Shia side, you have Iranian-backed special groups that are attacking American targets, Iraqi targets, Sunni and Shia for a variety of reasons. Some of them, I think, probably want to stir up sectarian violence. And, of course, al-Qaeda in Iraq continues its efforts to stir up sectarian violence. But increasingly, the reaction of Iraqis to horrific attacks that in the past would have generated tit-for-tat vengeance attacks has been discussed at the perpetrators and public avowals of a determination to resist future attacks, and very few tit-for-tat attacks, in many cases none at all. So that's a dramatically different situation from what we had been seeing in 2006. That trend toward civil war has been reversed. Now, that isn't to say that we can't have a civil war in Iraq in the future. Certainly, if things go badly, the bad news from this perspective is that the sectarian areas of Iraq are still mixed. The good news is that the mixed sectarian areas of Iraq are still mixed. And there is a myth out there that the violence has fallen because all of the cleansing is done. That is absolutely not the case. There has been a consolidation in many areas along the sectarian fault line at a sort of a micro level, and sometimes even at a macro level where entire villages have shifted from one sect to another. But Baghdad remains a mixed city. Both the eastern and the western sides of Baghdad have both Sunni and Shia populations. The traditionally Sunni areas in Baghdad, in Rashid, Mansour, and Adamiyah, are still predominantly Sunni areas, and there are still Shia areas in western Baghdad as well. The demography and the precise borders in each of these areas has shifted, but they continue to be mixed. As I said, that's good news and bad news. It means that if there is a prospect for the renewal of real sectarian strife, there are many rough edges where it could get going. The situation in Iraq has not stabilized along any dividing line that is in fact stable, defensible, mutually acceptable in the context of real sectarian cleansing. So not only has the civil war ended, but it has ended without the completion of a sectarian cleansing process, and with a renewed vocal commitment on the part of Baghdadis especially to preserve the mixed heritage of their city, which increasingly is held up as one of the distinctive characteristics of Baghdad. So that's been tremendous progress, and for those who were worried about Iraq breaking up, for those who were worried about having this sectarian cleansing run all the way to the end, I think that we're moving steadily and at an accelerating rate away from the likelihood of that happening. Al-Qaeda in Iraq. The command is extremely reluctant ever to say that we have defeated al-Qaeda in Iraq, and they're right. This is not the sort of war where you ever defeat an enemy like that and their leader hands you his sword and you sign a treaty and that's the end of it. Nevertheless, I think it's fair to say that al-Qaeda in Iraq has been defeated in this sense, that there is no measurable likelihood that it will achieve its aims of taking over Iraq and establishing an Islamic State of its liking. And the reason for that is because the Iraqi people, both Sunni and Shia, have overwhelmingly actually turned against al-Qaeda and are rejecting it. And I don't think that they're going to change their minds anytime soon. You may see various returns of terrorist groups. You may see returns of Sunni insurgent groups. I'll come back to this in a moment. But I think you're very unlikely to see Iraqis willingly or enthusiastically turn back to al-Qaeda and its ideology, having rejected it so decisively. And this is something, I don't want to go into too much detail here. I described this some in our report. But one of the ways that you can tell this is when you walk around and talk to Iraqis, concerned local citizens, particularly those who are former insurgents. there are a number of myths that have been created by these guys to explain how it was that they were really the victims and how they've liberated themselves from al-Qaeda with our assistance and so forth. In other words, the narrative on the ground increasingly is supporting the honorable movement from insurgency to cooperation with the Americans and the Iraqi government, and will make it increasingly hard for these same people to come up with a narrative that goes back to the same group. Now, that isn't to say that they wouldn't be able to come up with a narrative that would support going back to resistance of some form, but the vitriol with which they're now attacking these al-Qaeda guys and the narrative that they've created will make it hard. And it's a good sign, in my view, that they feel themselves so invested in moving in this direction that they are worried about explaining how it's really okay that they are now cooperating with us.